I hate to admit this, but it was way harder to come up with a list of the best things in wrestling in 2025 than it was to make a list of the worst things. I mean, I had to stop myself at 16 last week. There were way too many to choose from. But in this year where mainstream wrestling has meant less to me than ever before, I have to admit when I first started putting the list together, I was having a real hard time just coming up with 8. I mean, I'm not complaining about my year in wrestling, personally. I had my first one-on-one match in almost 20 years, bled for the first time ever, and I even won. I helped put on Maccabi Mania 3 in New Jersey, an event that might not have even taken place if it weren't for my reviews of the original Grandmasters DVDs all those years ago. I called the return of the mighty Maccabi, for goodness sake. I took an eye rake from Johnny Rodz, and if you can believe it, that show helped me get my break on Juggalo Championship Wrestling. Between that and the work with POW and Prestige, I've had some of the most fun of my entire career as it approaches the 20-year mark. And by stepping back from covering the modern scene, it's allowed me to better appreciate the good things that are out there. Suddenly all these memories of positive moments came flooding back to me as I wrote the script for this. And by the time I was done, I got to 14 entries. Sorry folks, I tried. There were plenty of individual performances that stood out. Folks like Bandito and Will Ospreay and Konosuke Takeshita and Dominic Mysterio and Io Sky and Rhea Ripley all had great years. And with more and more airwaves being taken up with wrestling every week, we the fans are spoiled for choice. But with some notable exceptions, it wasn't really the matches that I remembered most about this year. That's why this week, I'm gonna rank them, my picks for the top 14 best things about wrestling in 2025. Be sure to hit the subscribe button if you haven't yet and like this video. Let's begin. Number 14, Ludwig Kaiser as El Grande Americano. I'll admit, when Chad Gable first began working as El Grande Americano at the start of the year, I thought it was funny. I didn't think it had much of a shelf life, but I thought it was funny. But while some Americans argued that the gimmick was being done in poor taste, as if that's ever mattered in wrestling, it almost stopped mattering once Gable suffered a rotator cuff injury partway through the year. It seemed as if the thinly veiled mystery regarding the American Giant's identity was going to go up in smoke, until Ludwig Kaiser suddenly donned the mask as a replacement. Now, with such different physiques and in-ring styles, you might be wondering, how on earth would Ludwig try to replicate being Chad Gable? Well, here's the thing. They haven't even tried doing that, and it's worked out wonderfully. Fans in America and Mexico have come to embrace the absurdity of this ethnic turducken, a German portraying an American luchador. That, combined with Ludwig's distinct spin on the character, has made him far more beloved than perhaps originally intended. It has to be one of the few times in history when a conventionally attractive wrestler has become more popular after hiding his face. The downside to this accidental success is that it gave WWE permission to basically do the same thing 2 more times, more recently to Tyler Bate and Pete Dunne. God, imagine working for that company for the entirety of your 20s, and after all that, that's the best they have for you. Even though Los Americanos seemed to be mid-shark jump at the time of this recording, we can't ignore how Kaiser breathed new life into an already dying gimmick. Who could have guessed that this would have led to the run of his career so far? Number 13, Joe Hendry? I'm so conflicted by all this. Like, he won the TNA title even though it came after the peak of Hendry Mania, but he appeared in the Royal Rumble and had a WrestleMania moment even though they made him and by extension TNA both look stupid, but he eventually got signed to WWE, but they've totally flanderized him? You know what, Joe, my man, I love you. I'm happy for you. I really am. It just feels like a real monkey's paw situation, you know? Number 12, Naomi's reinvention. Before she took time off for her pregnancy, I felt like 2025 was going to be Naomi's year. After being revealed as Jade Cargill's mystery attacker at Elimination Chamber, enough was enough and it was time for a change as Naomi ditched the neon and went with more of a caution tape aesthetic. Turning into a vicious heel immediately freshened her up and made all of her matches take on a different feel than we'd ever seen before. And of course, her Money in the Bank win and subsequent cash-in at Evolution 1 month later had her on the cusp of something great. Let's hope that Naomi has a happy, healthy pregnancy and all that, and if she chooses to return to the ring, may the wrestling world proceed with caution. Number 11, more opportunities for the ladies. I don't think anyone was asking for more championships for the men in AEW. Looking at you, national title and resplitting the unified belt. But considering the women's roster is ever growing, it makes sense to give them something else to fight for besides the two singles belts that are pretty much locked up by a select few people. Late last year, AEW introduced a women's tag team championship to the mix, a big step in the right direction for a division that many feel is chronically underbooked. Though there was only one established team in the inaugural tournament, and they got taken out in the first round, the series gave fans a lot of interesting partnerships and matchups. I think the Timeless Love Bombs are a great use of Toni Storm and Mina Shirakawa, and the ultimate winners in the Babes of Wrath are a pair of babyfaces you can't help but get behind. Also, when it comes to gold, we can't forget the women's pure title that ROH introduced late in the year, which is currently held by Deonna Purrazzo. Also, kudos to AEW for introducing a women's blood and guts match, finally matching WWE, who've been doing a women's war games for several years now. The inaugural edition more than lived up to its name, though it may be a tough one to live up to in terms of brutality. And while I'm here, I want to give a shout out to Lyra Valkyria and Becky Lynch for the great work they did this past year in making WWE's Women's Intercontinental title one to watch. I know that and the US title debuted in 24, but in its first full year, it was good to see at least one of them get showcased in a run of big matches. Number 10, The Outrunners. Turbo Floyd and Truth Magnum's rise to prominence was one of the biggest and least likely success stories of the year in AEW. Like Broken Matt Hardy and Danhausen before them, the youngest men alive have proven that people will gravitate to outlandish gimmicks in a world that's desperate to embrace realism as long as you commit to the bit. And brother, Turbo and Truth have played their role to the hilt. From the vignettes to the entrances, to the gear, to the promos and the matches, the Outrunners are a welcome blast from the past and are a great act to watch. Number 9, Mercedes Moné, Belt Collector. Do you know how I know the angle is working? Because it gets people so angry for no damn reason. Some fans in wrestling just don't like Mercedes Moné, with some going as far back as the Sasha Banks days. And that's okay. People are entitled to like and dislike who they want. But I will never understand the rationale for this white-hot nuclear hatred that some people have for a lady whose only crime seems to be that promoters want to book her to win championships. The contempt for Moné reached all-time levels in 2025 when she amassed a big collection of belts. Not just the TBS title and the New Japan Strong Women's title, but over a dozen belts in all, representing companies across the globe of all different sizes. Now, just to confirm, when Ultimo Dragon did it, cool. When Kenny Omega did it, cool. When Dan Severn did it, very cool. Even when Austin Aries did it, people thought it was cool. But when loud, confident lady do it, boo! These days, when a wrestler that people don't like wins a lot of matches, some people think it can only be because said wrestler has too much political influence or creative control, and not just because the booker wants them to win a lot of matches. I think some fans have forgotten that in order for stars to be made and reinforced, the people who build them also have to have some stature as well, which is what Moné and the whole belt collector thing has been so far. The belts that Mercedes has been toting this year have served several purposes. For starters, it's been a relatively affordable form of advertising and bragging rights for all the companies involved. In storyline, the belts have been her strength, but also her greatest weakness. Lose the belts one by one, fail to win the big one, and the facade begins to crumble, which is exactly what we are beginning to see at this moment. People think Mercedes has the power to wield creative control, not just in AEW and New Japan, but all these other independent promotions she has belts with. But when she ultimately loses big matches to Toni Storm and Chris Statlander and Red Velvet, is that Moné just trying to outsmart the real fans who know the truth? Or is it just the booking is a bit better than you give it credit for? So go on, Miss CEO, keep on doing what you're doing. Your very existence seems to make people seethe uncontrollably regardless of what you do, so you might as well live life to the fullest. Number 8, Kenny Omega returns to wrestling. It's pretty wild to think that Kenny Omega delivered some of the best matches of the last 5 years while going through some sort of debilitating pain. He worked through a litany of injuries during his run as AEW World Champion. Fast forward to 2023, when the Best Bout machine began to feel what he first thought was a hernia but turned out to be diverticulitis. For more than a year, Omega was on the shelf while dealing with the crippling disease. He recently said that had he waited any longer to get diagnosed, his situation could have turned fatal. At the very end of 2024, Omega returned to confront new Continental Champion Kazuchika Okada to signal that the renewal of their classic rivalry was imminent. Since last January, Omega has been back in action on a somewhat limited basis, averaging about one match per month, including one final awesome encounter with the Rainmaker over the Unified Championship. We may be seeing his career wind down, but considering what he's bounced back from, it's great that fans are getting him while they can. Well, folks, we are halfway through this countdown. Has your favorite thing about wrestling shown up yet? Let me know in the comments section, and be sure to predict what you think number 1 is going to be. Number 7, Saturday night's main event, John Cena's final match. Yes, I still think Cena's final year, on the whole, fell well short of expectations, but at least the ending he got was done very well. True to the marketing and the build-up, it was a really strong showcase of the new wave of WWE talent going up against the firmly established names. And I gotta give credit where it's due, they didn't get totally jobbed out. And in case you didn't get enough of it throughout the year, this special was packed with John Cena tributes from folks all over the wrestling and entertainment worlds in celebration of the 17-time champion. We had a silly skit with The Miz, R-Truth, and Joe Hendry. Then there was the big main event, Cena's final match with Gunther. And as I mentioned last week, it was a darn good match. I get why people are upset about Cena losing and the way in which he lost, but if he was going to go down, honestly, that was the best way to do it, in my opinion. And let's be real here, as much as we love Cena right now, I think a lot more people would have been upset had he won. I've got to hand it to them, nobody does sentimental video packages in wrestling like WWE, and they went all out with their emotional tribute video to Cena after the match had concluded. Though it was odd that the only time we saw Cena crack a genuine smile was when Vince McMahon showed up in it. Yes, Cena's last year in wrestling will go down along with the Invasion and the second summer of Punk as some of WWE's biggest missed opportunities. But after losing an engine, part of a wing, and a few passengers, they somehow managed to stick the landing with a lovely send-off to one of their biggest ever stars. Number 6, the Broke Bucks. This year has seen Matthew and Nicholas Jackson take quite the creative roller coaster. After months of playing a parody of the egomaniacal executives they've been alleged to be in real life, the Bucks took their hubris to new heights at Double or Nothing. At Anarchy in the Arena, a match type that revolves around the ridiculous, the Young Bucks debuted their new colonial-inspired Founding Fathers gimmick, complete with overwrought and condescending verbiage delivered by the disapproving Justin Roberts and punctuated by an all-time Tony Schiavone call.
Well, that's about the biggest bullshit intro I've ever heard.
The spectacle continued at All In when Matt and Nick put their EVP roles on the line, arriving on a cherry picker disguised as a boat crossing the Delaware that ended up breaking down halfway through. Just brilliant heel face planting. After losing to Will Ospreay and Swerve Strickland, the downward spiral began swiftly. The Bucks' name keys got increasingly disrespectful, the lavish entrances stripped down to broken and poorly designed graphics. I love a good running gag, and for a while this is one of the weekly highlights of Dynamite. Seeing all the ways things could go wrong for the Jacksons as they kept losing their fortunes on air was a hilarious bit of business after months of build-up as this irritating force, even if their alliance with the Death Riders didn't make any damn sense. Now, slowly but surely, the Bucks have swung back to the babyface end of the spectrum, winning a share of $1 million with the help of the Don Callis family, but ultimately coming to the aid of their former friends in Kenny Omega and the Jurassic Express. Will 2026 finally be the year for an honest-to-goodness elite reunion? Time will tell. Number 5, AJ Lee returns to wrestling. When you look back at the career of AJ Lee, it's kinda nuts she made it as far as she did. She did not fit the mold of a WWE diva. Management openly told her she wasn't desirable enough, and perhaps most damning of all, she wrestled in an era of bikini contests and pillow fights and bull riding competitions. Before this past year, it was often said that Lee was ahead of her time, that she got out of wrestling just before the women's division really began to hit its stride and be treated with respect. So many great competitors she missed out on, while both she and her husband CM Punk stayed out of wrestling entirely. Once the Punker came back in 2021, lots of fans wondered when the other Converse would drop and AJ would come back into the fold. But aside from a brief stint as an executive producer of the WoW reboot, she stayed out of the limelight. Until this past September. The roof blew off the building in Chicago when Lee showed up in WWE for the first time in a decade to help CM Punk confront fellow power couple Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch, en route to a successful in-ring return at WrestlePalooza. I think it's great that AJ is getting a chance to take a victory lap or two in a division that she helped lay the foundation for so many years ago, to have the chance to wrestle some of the best women in the business after the company previously worked so hard to downplay her legacy. Much like her husband, it seemed as if AJ would never return to a company she had such a complicated relationship with. But for all the issues I have with the H-Man in charge, the guy knows how to talk him back. Number 4. Brody Lee Jr. wins the clusterfuck. It was 5 years ago last month when the wrestling world was shocked at the sudden death of Brody Lee at the age of 41. But one of the more heartwarming things to come out of this tragic passing was to see how the business has given back to his family in ways like this. What a year it's been for the former -1. First we go to Las Vegas over WrestleMania weekend, the site of GCW's Clusterfuck Forever. After a grueling 2-hour-plus battle royal involving 97 humans, an Invisible Man, and Yoshihiko, in the end it was 15-year-old Brody Jr. who stormed the ring and took out Joey Janela to become the youngest winner in Clusterfuck history. Then came Supercard of Honor in July, when the youngster showed up to help his old friends in the Dark Order defeat the Frat House in another feel-good moment. Little things like this are great because they remind us just how strong the wrestling brotherhood can be, and how that brotherhood can come together in the face of tragedy. I'd say this kid has a bright future. Number 3. Elimination Chamber and All In, the best pay-per-views of the year. I know I've missed out on some really good wrestling shows in the latter half of the year, but when it comes to the best of 2025, I feel like I saw it before my cutoff. For me, there's no doubt in my mind that Elimination Chamber last February in Toronto was WWE's most powerful single-night PLE of the year. We saw an amazing unsanctioned war between Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn that would be Owens' last big moment before taking time off for neck surgery, and a fiery women's chamber match that saw Bianca Belair win after witnessing her friend beat up her other friend. And the men's chamber match was not only solid in its own right, but then gave way to the best singular moment WWE had all year, the John Cena heel turn. It was gutsy as hell, even if creative fell asleep at the wheel for the 3 or so months afterward. But the feeling of watching that go down for the first time, it's gonna be hard to replicate. On the AEW side, All In deserves top marks for their strongest show of 2025. Despite the ungodly length that has become AEW's unfortunate trademark, the 21,000 in Texas witnessed a lot of great matches. Texas boy Dustin Rhodes shocked the world by beating Kyle Fletcher for the vacant TNT title. Timeless Toni was the first one to weather the storm of Mercedes Moné and all her belts. Omega and Okada gave fans one last chapter in their epic rivalry. And of course, AEW's feel-good moment of the year came when Hangman Page beat Jon Moxley in a Texas death match to finally free the AEW World title from its briefcase. Another satisfying redemption for the man some call AEW's main character. If only the reign after the big win was a bit more interesting. For each providing a bevy of fun action and captivating stories in their own unique ways, All In Texas and Elimination Chamber are my picks for the best shows of the whole ding-dang year. Let me know if you agree. Number 2. Chris Bay walks again. In October of last year, one day after Bound for Glory, rising X Division star Chris Bay suffered a broken neck while performing a routine move, leading to emergency neck and spinal fusion and paralysis. The former X Division and Tag Team Champion was given low odds of ever being able to walk or use his hands again, but through hard work and determination, he managed to defy the grim prognosis. At Unbreakable in April, Bay proved he was just that when he walked out under his own own power to update fans on his situation. Then at Bound for Glory 25, 1 year after his devastating injury, the Dashing One came out once again to announce the company's new North American attendance record. There's not much else to say about this besides that it's wonderful to see Chris literally back on his feet again after so much uncertainty in those first several months. Though his wrestling days are likely very much over, what's more important is that a quality human like Chris can still be around to impart his wisdom to future stars. His story is truly one of the biggest inspirations of the year. And my pick for the #1 best thing about wrestling in 2025 is the Hollywood ending. I know there were a lot of great matches this year, but there are a lot of great matches every year. Every once in a while you get one like this that truly stands head and shoulders above the rest. Timeless Toni Storm has been the best damn thing about AEW since debuting the character in 2023. In a promotion that relies heavily on dynamic in-ring action to carry the weight, their most popular act has not only been a terrific wrestler, but a mentally unstable, self-accredited, cooked-out Hollywood starlet, and the fans haven't wanted it any other way. Enter Mariah May. In a year-long feud that was crafted in the spirit of classic Hollywood tales like All About Eve and Single White Female, the standout from Stardom debuted in AEW as an adoring fan and understudy of Storm, hoping to emulate Toni's every move and variance. Imbued with heady sapphic overtones, the partnership between Storm and May became increasingly intense as fans wondered, will they or won't they? Unfortunately, Storm forgot to heed her own advice to watch out for the shoe. In a betrayal that I completely forgot to include in this video, May brutalized and bloodied Toni with her own high heel after winning the Owen Hart tournament in a title match against Storm at All In. May stood victorious in Wembley Stadium as Toni receded to the shadows, the company having crafted a top heel from scratch. After a 4-month sojourn spent in Japan and Mexico, Storm returned, first feigning amnesia and reverting back to her punk rock persona, but as it turned out, it was all acting. Toni went back to black and white and made her vengeful and sexy intentions clear, regaining her world championship at Grand Slam Australia in February. That set the stage for the rubber match, arguably the greatest blow-off to a women's feud on American soil, the Hollywood ending, a grand finale to top them all. And top they did. It was a bloody, violent war in multiple acts. Every set piece served a purpose. We had a Taipei deathmatch break out in the middle of it. All types of crazy crap. The whole ordeal finally ended with a Storm Zero piledriver through the specially themed table, the bloody heap of a pinfall, the words "The End" appearing on the screen. A beautiful thing from start to finish that received universal praise and had you wanting a cigarette afterward. And let me tell you something, brother, when Hulk Hogan himself puts the match and the women over, that's saying something. The Hollywood ending was the perfect way to wrap up what's arguably AEW's greatest rivalry, as Storm sent her former protege to WWE in gory fashion. Besides what it proved for women's wrestling, it also reiterated that AEW is capable of more than crazy matches. They can also deliver classic, dare I say, timeless storytelling. That's why the Hollywood ending was my pick for the best thing about wrestling in 2025. My only gripe about it? It should have gone on last! Thanks so much for watching, folks. What did you think of this list? What else should have gone on here? Let me know in the comments. 2025 might have sucked for a lot of reasons, but when I step back and look at everything, I guess it wasn't so bad after all. Here's hoping that 2026 keeps the good momentum going. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.